Today in this video, we will take another look at the topic of polishing fenders. What should you pay attention to? Which machines should you use? The best pads, perhaps also the best polishes here for the E, as we have some really severe damage. What should you maybe mask off? Here's a quick and compact polishing tutorial for you out there, especially when it comes to the topic of fenders, as there are several things to consider. Have fun. Let's get started. If you are polishing an area on the vehicle and you are still at the beginning of the whole polishing topic and are just getting into it a bit, then there is always one very important point. Look at the shapes and sizes of the surfaces. And here with the E, it has this M package from the factory. This means that the whole thing is also relatively strongly designed, so to speak, with many very narrow areas and a lot of transitions. Here is a very flared fender approach again, and here is another separation, here a trim strip, and then comes the turn signal. There is still an edge up here, and that's why we took another look at it from the side. You can already see that we are very limited in terms of space. This means we don't have any nice smooth surfaces here. It simply means to take a polishing pad, depending on what you have at home, maybe 75mm. This is a 50mm polishing pad, and when you just place it on, you can already see how well you can reach the edges and simply tilt the pad a bit. If you notice that it only tilts very slightly, then it is actually still very well suited. If we go up here to the edge, you can already see that this angle is very large. So here we are already tilting quite a bit, and if we want to get up here, then half of the polishing pad is already hanging over. This means that the area up here is really better suited for a slightly smaller polishing pad. Specifically for the size in the range of 38 and 30mm, you can see here this is clearly better. Here it is somewhat undersized as we have a lot of space left, but it is definitely doable. The entire upper area can also be polished with the smaller pads and so on. However, we want to save as much time as possible. This means that in this area, you can see with the small pad it would take way too long. We can either go back to a polishing pad like this one, and you can see that quite a bit is already gone. We could also go to 75 here, for example. So it varies a lot. Just take a look at how the areas are structured. It's different for every vehicle. And then you can really decide which pads you need. And someone like him, an absolute cheap pad, as you can see here, creates a hollow space underneath. That means you polish extremely hard here at the top and here at the bottom on the 2 points. If you press down really hard here, you will also bend it. The pad won't last long like this, and the paint is being heavily polished at both points while nothing happens in the middle. So this is absolutely not suitable. Up here you can see that the pad is completely over, and this also happens with 125. The only place where it might still be used would be in this area. But the question is whether you should completely dirty the pad for this area or if you should just use the 50 or 75 as well. So you can see that this fender is very special. And I would also categorize this into different areas. Here is one area, then I would see this longitudinal strip at the top as another area and first work my way down from top to bottom. That means we simply start at the top. I would see the strip that is integrated through these two design edges as a component, as an area that we want to polish. Then I would also include the small corner at the front that forms here. Then the whole area, and then this part here as one area, and down here again the piece. Yes, and a nice lamp as part of the equipment, polishes, and also a degreaser included. And here in this special case, with these very narrow areas and many curves, I would definitely go for a mini polishing machine. Whether it is corded or cordless, there are various models available. I'm using the Evo Mini here because I have the option to start directly with the plate. As we just saw with the pad size, it's actually one of the most comfortable options in terms of size, not too small, not too large. So, Evo Mini, ER plate on it, and we also have the ER plate available, which is located behind the lamp. That means we can still use the pads here just the same, medium finish and cut pad, but here, with the paint condition that we are about to look at, you will definitely be able to reach for the cut pad right away, because you can already see here, these are the polish residues that we just pressed out of the pads, but you can see it, there are so many scratches on it. You are welcome to do a test spot on your vehicle, as always, of course, very important. But we have worked a bit more on the vehicle now, and we already know that we definitely need significant cutting power here, followed by a finishing step. The 1000 should already bring us to a nice level. UltimateCut, March 6th, along with a suitable heavy cut pad, and give me a little polish on it. And then we will start by properly working on this area with the polishing plate. Up here, we just realized that we need the smaller one. Of course, you can also start directly with the small polishing pad, but I will first complete this strip, so to speak, the area, and then we will look at the area up here, and then we will compare the difference before and after. It is very, very important, especially in these narrow areas, to really work the polish in thoroughly, because in these curves it sometimes happens that the polish comes loose from the pad and then flies over the paint. So really start the machine slowly here. You will eventually get to know your pads and your polishes. How do they react? Are they very liquid? Do they stick well to the polishing pad? There are indeed differences, and that's why you need to test a few out. Here, when you work with the polishes for a long time, you simply develop a feel for it and you can then respond accordingly. So here, go over it evenly. I will then set the machine to the highest setting and subsequently guide it evenly across the paint surface. This is very, very important. You also need to always check that when you go over with the polishing pad, you create a small path, as you can see here, and it needs to be as wide as possible. If you notice that it only has about half the size of the pad, then you have aimed the machine incorrectly. Or the surface is simply too beveled or too round, then a smaller pad would need to be used. But here with the ER pad, it actually works very, very well. It went well, Yusen. And you actually have a two-pass technique, once along the top and once along the bottom. You can also see the traces in the picture here. This works very, very well. And now back down again. So this works very, very well. Just test it out there. You don't learn this in 5 minutes or through a video like this. You get tips here and you simply implement them, gradually working your way towards finding a perfect solution. And you can polish a fender quite quickly and effectively here. And I think you can do it too. If you have any questions, I'm also available anytime on WhatsApp. Yes, let's take a look at that. So we naturally have a very light haze in there. Of course, because we worked with a very strong polishing pad and also a very strong polish. And you can clearly see that the scratches have come out very, very well. If we compare this with the front here, I can briefly take a look at it. Now there's already a noticeable difference. Of course, we need to make sure to achieve a really nice finish on this black solid paint, which doesn't have any metallic flakes in it. That means we are now taking the finish pad and finish polish, applying it to the surface here and distributing it briefly. With the ADBL Perfect Finish, you can see that it is noticeably more fluid than the cut polish we had before. And again, it is very, very important to work the polish in evenly because otherwise most of the polish will not stay on the paint. This simply varies with some polishes. So always make sure to try it out. And now with very, very light pressure here on such a uni black, really just a tiny bit of pressure, keep the machine nice and straight and you will achieve a wonderfully clear result. As soon as you tilt the machine in any way, you create a new gray haze here and you can see it quite well. Once I angle it, I start to kind of saw into the paint surface, so to speak. So make sure to lay it down nice and flat and observe it nicely from the side. It's really just a matter of practice. During the finishing process, it is really, really important that you take the pressure off, especially with a solid black color, because you have a very, very sensitive paint that shows every mistake. So as soon as you tilt the pad, you will no longer have a clear surface even with a finishing pad. So here you just have to experiment a bit. There are even softer pads than the one I have here. You should play around with your pad and polish combinations. This is also what I mean by gaining experience, trying things out and making comparisons. These are the tips that I always like to share with you. So these are never general recipes and no fixed rules. Instead, everyone has to find their own variation. It looks really, really good. If we now go over to the other side, we can clearly see the scratches. We can also temporarily remove the tape here for testing. What we can already see now is the color difference, which is also beautifully reflected at the back, showing the color depth. Here is the black that is reflected from the wall, and here it is. Again, the black is a bit grayer, but when you shine the lamp on it, you can see it very, very clearly. So here you can already see a very, very nice difference. And here you have the before area once again. Now, there is an area that we definitely need to mask off. The hood is slightly below the edge of the fender, so the surface is a bit lower than here. But just to complete it, I will simply show you how to mask it off. Simply secure your tape in the area and then I could just run my finger along it once and press it down. You will also notice that when you start to put too much pressure on the tape here, it begins to come apart more and more. So pay attention to this when you are polishing up here and you notice that the tape is getting frayed or very thin at the top or is completely gone, then you have pressed too hard here and you have been too forceful on the edge as well. That's why we also use the tape. It's simply a protective measure, just an edge and transition protection. So now we go in with the polishing pad, the same combination, spread it out a bit, and then we distribute it again 2001. And you can see here the area is very, very short and small and narrow, and we can really stop after just a few passes. Work in the polish briefly. So, as you can see, this is really going quite smoothly. The polish has also distributed well on the pad, and you can easily cover the entire area in one go. I'm just doing these small test areas for you for the video. Always make sure to take the right cloths back into your hands, the ones you used for polishing before. So don't go over it now with the finished cloth that you just had and pull the UltimateCut polish in here as a residue. And here you can also notice that we are slightly touching the area that we have already polished. So here's another tip. Ideally, first carry out all the cutting processes and then clean everything up nicely. It's best to set the cloths completely aside and then switch to finish. So let's see what this has already achieved. And I think it actually doesn't look that bad. We have that little haze again, that slight veil, that greyish veil in it, sanding marks. I always want to include all the words so that you can understand it as well. And now we simply go over it again here with the finish variant. That means pad down, finish pad, your favorite, finish polish. When using a small pad on a small area, it is important to remember that you should also use a small amount of fresh cloth. This means you should not apply too much pressure. Instead, gently go over the areas where you have already worked before. By doing this, you ensure that the surface is evenly treated without causing any damage. For instance, if you are cleaning a delicate surface, such as a wooden table or a glass window, applying too much pressure could result in scratches or other forms of damage. Therefore, always be gentle and thorough in your approach, making sure to cover all previously worked areas with care and precision. And now we can spray a little degreaser onto the cloth for the optimal result and really clean the surface perfectly. There you have removed any remaining polish residues that might still be hiding somewhere, sometimes here in these small crevices. Then you take that and spread it over the entire surface, and then you have haze on it again. And here you can simply work on the area nicely. Once more, we still have quite a significant paint defect in there. I believe it should come into view now. Maybe it's not very clearly visible on the camera, but we can take a look at the before point here, and there we see, yes, we have all the heavy defects in there. And over here it really looks very, very nice now. Yes, and this protruding fender edge is another point to consider. You can see here that a small paint triangle is also forming, and you just need to pay attention to which pad and which polish will achieve the best result there. And above all, the pad size is really crucial, especially these small curves. You really need to go precisely into the transition here to the upper paint surface, and on the lower side, you have to go exactly into the recess again. You can also see here that the machine needs to be angled again and the upper piece should be worked on. And you just have to try to blend into that transition as much as possible. Otherwise, you'll end up with some really bad residual scratches. So, this is another point. This pointed paint area over the flared fender section is really inconvenient to polish. So, if you also have smaller support parts, for example, polishing with the 10mm backing plate, you can give that a try as well. But you should be able to achieve this very well with the small machine as well, because the pads also provide a certain polishing performance on the side. So, this should work, and always make sure that you are evenly resting the pad on the surface and not pressing the pad too hard, because that can lead to significant hologram formation, which can cause problems later on. But this should actually work well here. And the same applies here for the finish step. Now completely reduce the pressure again, evenly distribute the polish, and slowly increase the machine speed. Always make sure that the polish doesn't fly around, as we tend to angle the pad a bit and let some air in, which can cause the polish to leave the pad. So you see here, that worked out really well. And once you get a little used to it, it works very, very well. Here, work evenly on the area and also address the sections on the right with the larger pads, which could then be worked on again afterwards with the UltimateCut polish. Depending on that, it varies from fender to fender. So with that, you also have different challenges, or you will definitely find your way. And as I said, if you have any questions about it, you can also send me a picture via WhatsApp, and I can give you some tips on that as well. So, let's take a look together here in normal light, and you can already see how this grey haze takes over the surface. It's good to see it up here again, down here. Yes, indeed, you can see it nicely now. If we look at it again with the lamp, we can clearly see how this area has significantly more color enhancement now. And here you can simply repeat the steps again if you say, okay, I need more shine, I need more scratch reduction. But I think it looks really, really good. In contrast to before, you can clearly see how the scratch carpet field goes over it. So, there's a clear difference here, especially at the transition. In terms of time management, one often achieves success in a short period here because the areas are very small and narrow, allowing for a lot to be accomplished in a short time. In stark contrast to a hood like this, where you really have to invest time, as these are huge areas, I think the fender shouldn't be a problem. You just need the right equipment. Here, you are completely out of place with 125 and 150. That's not how it works. If you want to polish an entire vehicle so beautifully here, you also need the appropriate tools and pads and so on. Why a slightly longer video? I am always available for you on WhatsApp as well. You can find the number displayed here or below the video. And you can simply forward your questions and problems to me, and I will try to help you with them. Well, we are done. I hope it was still as compact as possible, and that I was able to share as much informative content with you as possible. Until next time, and maybe we'll see each other at the next component towards the A pillar.